Sarah knew that even looking at him was a step toward danger. The dust from his truck had settled on her family's prize-winning pumpkins, a stark reminder of the chaotic world he brought with him. She adjusted her white prayer cap, her fingers trembling, and told herself to walk away. But then he spoke not with the arrogance of an outsider, but with a voice full of a loneliness that matched her own. As the sun dipped below the silo, casting long shadows across the corn, Sarah realized the fence between them wasn't there to keep him out. It was there to keep her in. And for the first time in her life, she wanted to cross it. The morning mist still clung to the rolling hills of Lancaster County, lying heavy and white over the fields like a fresh quilt. It was that distinct time of day when the world felt suspended between the darkness of night and the labor of the day. In the Beiler household, the silence was not empty. It was full of purpose. The only sounds were the rhythmic scratching of the heavy wooden match against the box and the subsequent hiss of the kerosene lamp flickering to life. Sarah Beiler moved through the kitchen with the grace of someone who had performed these motions 1,000 times. She was 22, past the age of rumspringa, and firmly settled into her life as a baptized member of the church. She adjusted her cap over her neatly pinned hair, smoothing the white fabric. The smell of rising sourdough and strong coffee began to fill the room, pushing back the chill of the Pennsylvania autumn. To an outsider, her life might have seemed small. Her days were measured in the milking of cows, the stitching of quilts, and the teaching of reading and writing to the children at the one-room schoolhouse down the lane. But to Sarah, this life was vast. It was deep. It was rooted in the soil that her grossdaddy had tilled and in the prayers that rose from their farmhouse every morning and night. But that morning, the peace was shattered. It didn't come with a storm or a sickness. It came with the roar of an engine. Sarapau said, the knife hovering over a loaf of bread. The sound was guttural, mechanical, and angry. It grew low there, shaking the window panes in their old frames. Her father, Amos, looked up from his Bible at the head of the table, his brow furrowed deep like a plowed field. The English, Amos said quietly, though the word carried the weight of a stone. At the old Miller place. The Miller place sat directly adjacent to the Beiler farm. Old Widow Miller had passed away the winter before, leaving the farm empty, the barn paint peeling, and the fields overrun with weeds. It had been a sad sight, a missing tooth in the smile of the valley. Rumors had swirled at the market that a distant relative from the city on Englischer had inherited the deed. Sarah went to the window, peering through the sheer curtain. A battered red pickup truck, coated in city grime and highway dust, was backing up to the porch of the Miller house. A man stepped out. He wore denim jeans that looked stiff and boots that looked too new. He stood there for a moment, looking at the overgrown grass, his hands on his hips. Even from this distance, Sarah could sense his frustration. He kicked at a loose board on the porch, and the sound echoed across the valley. He will not stay. Her mother, Martha, said softly, pouring milk into the pitcher. They never do. The work is too hard, and the silence is too loud for them. Sarah nodded, returning to the bread jamang. She whispered, but as she sliced the crusty loaf, her mind wandered back to the figure in the distance, a looked, lost, and in a community where everyone knew exactly where they belonged, a lost soul was a dangerous curiosity. Later that afternoon, Sarah walked home from the schoolhouse. The children had been restless, distracted by the changing leaves, and she was tired. She took the shortcut along the fence line that separated their land from the Miller place. The corn was high, dry, and whispering in the breeze, ready for the harvest. She heard the cursing before she saw him. It was a sharp, frustrated string of words that made her cheeks flush. She stopped, hidden by the stalks. Through the gap in the wooden fence, she saw the stranger. He was wrestling with the old water pump near the barn. He was covered in grease, his face streaked with sweat and dirt. He pumped the handle furiously, but only a trickle of brown sludge spat out. He let out a groan and sat back on his heels, burying his face in his hands. He looked defeated. Sarah knew she should keep walking. It was not her place to speak to strange men, especially Englishmen who used such language. But she saw the slump of his shoulders. It was the posture of a man who was alone. Without thinking, she stepped closer to the fence. "You have to prime it first," she said. Her voice was soft, barely carrying over the wind. The man jumped, spinning around. His eyes were wide, a startling shade of blue against the grime on his face. He looked at the cornfield, trying to spot her. "Who's there?" he asked. Sarah stepped out from the shadows of the cornstalks, clutching her basket of books against her chest. "The pump," she said, nodding toward the rusty iron handle. "It has been dry for a year. You must pour water into the top to make the water come up from the bottom." The man stared at her. For a moment he seemed struck dumb by the sight of Hertha plain-dressed, the color of the twilight sky, the white apron, the bonnet framing her face. I don't have any water to pour in," he admitted, his voice rough. "That's why I'm trying to pump it." Sarah hesitated. Then she reached into a basket and pulled out a mason jar half filled with water she had saved from her lunch. She walked to the fence and held it out. "Here," she said. He walked over slowly, as if approaching a wild deer that might bolt. He took the jar, his fingers brushing hers. His hands were calloused, but warm. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Pour it slowly," Sarah instructed, ignoring the introduction. Names created connections, and she could not be connected to him. While Yupeng, Daniel did as he was told. He poured the water and worked the handle. Once, twice, 3 times. Suddenly, clear, cold water gushed out, splashing over his boots. He laughed. It was a genuine, surprised sound. "It works. You're a lifesaver." He turned to thank her, wiping his hands on his jeans, but when he looked back at the fence, the spot where she had stood was empty. Only the swaying cornstalks remained, whispering secrets to the wind. The weeks that followed brought the glorious transformation of autumn. The maples turned to fire, and the oaks turned to gold. The air grew crisp, smelling of wood smoke and dried apples. On the Beiler farm, the harvest was in full swing. The men worked from dawn until starlight, cutting, threshing, and storing. At the Miller place, things were changing too. The red truck was still there, but the angry noises had stopped. Slowly, the farm began to breathe again. The porch was fixed. The weeds were cut back. Smoke curled from the chimney. Sarah found herself watching the progress. She told herself it was just neighborly concern, but every time she walked the fence line, her heart beat a little faster. She saw Daniel often. He was clearly struggling. He didn't know how to stack wood so it wouldn't rot. He didn't know which clouds meant rain. He was trying to tame a beast he didn't understand. One Tuesday, as she walked home, he was waiting by the fence. He wasn't working. He was just leaning there, holding 2 apples. "I didn't steal them," he said quickly, seeing her apprehension. "They're from the old tree behind the barn. It's the only thing on this property that seems to know what it's doing." He offered her one. It was small and knotted, not like the perfect produce her father grew, but it was red and bright. Sarah stopped. The Ordnung did not forbid talking to neighbors. It commanded kindness. "Thank you," she said, taking the apple. "I never got your name." Daniel said, "Since you ran off like a ghost last time." "I am Sarah," she said, looking down at her black shoes. "Sarah," he repeated. He said it differently than the men in her community. He didn't say it with expectation or command. He said it with wonder. "I'm Daniel. My grandmother was Mrs. Miller. I used to visit here when I was 5. I barely remember it." "Why did you come back?" Sarah asked. The question slipped out before she could stop it. Daniel looked out over the valley. His expression darkened. "My life in Philadelphia. It got loud, too loud. I made mistakes. He lost my way. When the letter came about the farm, I thought maybe if I went back to where things were simple, I could find myself again." He laughed bitterly. "But it turns out, simple is the hardest work I've ever done." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the modern clothes, she saw the weary spirit of a man seeking peace. That was something she understood. "Simplicity is not about having less," Sarah said gently. "It is about making room for what matters. You're trying to force the farm to work. You must listen to it instead." That conversation became the first of many. It started with advice on when to cover the garden, how to check the barn roof for leaks, but it grew into something else. They met at the fence line in the late afternoons. A safe distance, a wooden barrier between two worlds. Daniel told her about the ocean, about skyscrapers that touched the clouds, about music that came from boxers and lights that never went out. Sarah listened, fascinated and terrified. In turn, she told him about the rhythm of the seasons, the comfort of the Jimmy church service, the joy of a barn raising where 100 hands made light work. "Ideally, you don't need all that stuff," Daniel said one evening, watching the sun set. "You have everything right here. You have a community. In the city, you can be surrounded by 1,000,000 people and be completely alone. Here, you're never alone." "Sometimes," Sarah admitted, her voice barely a whisper, "one wishes for a moment of being unknown. To not be Sarah the school teacher, or Sarah the daughter, but just ... Sarah." Daniel looked at her, his gaze intense. "I see just Sarah," he said. The air between them grew thick, charged with something unspoken. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the wool of her shawl. She gripped the rough wood of the fence. This was wrong. She knew it was wrong. Es was Englischer. His world was full of vanity and distraction. He could never understand the deep, silent current of her faith. And yet, when she looked at him, she didn't feel distant from God. She felt seen. The turning point came with the first frost. The valley turned silver overnight. Sarah was in the schoolhouse, sweeping the floor after the children had left. The door creaked open. She turned, expecting one of her students returning for a forgotten lunch pail. It was Bishop Stoltzfus. He was a kind man, with a beard that reached his chest and eyes that had seen 80 years of life in the valley. But today, his eyes were stern. He held his black hat in his hands. "Sarah," he said. His voice was not loud, which made it worse. "Bishop," she curtsied slightly, her stomach dropping to the floor. "It has been brought to my attention," he began slowly, "that you have been spending time at the fence line with the English man." Sarah gripped the broom handle. We talk. "Bishop, he is new. He needs help understanding the land." "Is it the land he is interested in, Sarah? Or is it the neighbor?" The bishop walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky. "We are in the world, but not of Italiano. We are a separate people. When we mix with the world, we do not lift the world up. The world pulls us down." "He is not a bad man," Sarah defended him, her voice trembling. "He is not of our faith," the bishop said firmly. "There are rumors, Sarah. Eyes are watching. Your father is worried. A buggy cannot follow 2 paths. It will break apart. You must choose the path of your people, or you will find yourself walking alone." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Do not go to the fence again, child. Protect your heart, and protect your soul." Sarah stood in the empty schoolhouse, tears stinging her eyes. The warning was clear. If she continued, she faced the bantha shunning. She would be cut off from her family, her friends, her church. No one would eat with her. No one would accept a gift from her hand. She would be a stranger in her own home. That night, supper at the Beiler house was suffocating. Amos would not look at her. Her mother placed an extra spoonful of potatoes on her plate, a silent gesture of sorrow. Sarah lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She prayed for strength. She prayed to forget the blue of Daniel's eyes. She prayed to be a good Amish woman, but the prayers felt hollow. 2 days later, a shiny black Cara developer's car drove up the lane to Daniel's house. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, her heart aching. She saw men in suits walking the property, pointing at the barn, pointing at the fields. Later, she saw Daniel sitting on his porch steps, head in his hands. She couldn't help it. The Ordnung was about rules, but her faith was about love. She threw her shawl over her shoulders and ran, not to the fence, but through the gate onto his land. She found him staring at a contract. Daniel. He looked up, surprised to see her on his side of the boundary. "Sarah, you shouldn't be here. I heard your people are talking." "Who are those men?" she asked, breathless. Daniel crumpled the paper. "Developers. They want to buy the farm. They want to turn it into a strip mall and a parking lot." Sarah gasped. "But this is good land. God's land. It's land I can't manage. Sarah." Daniel stood up, his voice cracking. "I'm failing. Everything I plant dies. The roof still leaks. And now I'm ruining your reputation just by being your neighbor. The bishop came to see me too. He told me I was a stumbling block for you." He looked at her, his eyes full of pain. "I'm going to sell Sarah. I'm going to take the money and go back to Philly. It's better for everyone. It's better for you." The news that the Miller farm was to be paved over spread through the valley like a blight. The Amish community was devastated. To them, land was a stewardship from God. To see fertile soil covered in asphalt was a tragedy, but for Sarah, the tragedy was personal. Daniel was leaving. For 3 days, she did not see him. She went through her chores like a machine. She taught the children, but she didn't smile. She milked the cows, but she didn't hum. She felt as though a light inside her had been extinguished. She realized then that her love for Daniel wasn't just about romance. It was about the spirit she saw in him, the desire to be better, to learn, to grow. And she had shown him the beauty of this life, only to have him give up on it because of her. On the 4th day, Sunday, the family sat in the long church service. The preacher spoke of sacrifice, of Abraham and Isaac, of giving up what you love for the will of God. Sarah sat on the hard wooden bench, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. Is it God's will for him to leave? She wondered. Or is it fear? After the service, she walked home alone. The for sale sign was up at the end of Daniel's driveway. The red truck was packed with boxers. She saw him tightening a rope over the truck bed. He was leaving now. Today? Sarah stopped at the fence. The boundary. The line she wasn't supposed to cross. "Daniel," she called out. He froze. He turned slowly. He looked tired, defeated. He walked over to the fence, but he didn't come close. "I'm heading out," he said quietly. "You should go inside." "Sarah, is this what you want?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "To run away?" "I'm not running away. I'm saving you," he said intensely. "I can't ask you to leave your world, Sarah. I know what it means to you, and I can't stay here and be the reason you lose it. I love you too much for that." The words hung in the crisp air. "I love you." He had said it. Sarah felt her heart break into 1,000 pieces. "If you sell this land," she whispered, "you are selling a piece of your soul. You belong here. Daniel, I saw it. The land knows you now." "It doesn't matter," he said, turning away. "Goodbye, Sarah." He walked to the truck. He got in. The engine roared to life, that same angry sound from the first day. Sarah stood at the fence, gripping the wood. She watched the truck roll down the driveway. She watched it turn onto the main road. She watched it get smaller and smaller until it disappeared around the bend. She sank to her knees in the dirt, her bonnet falling back, and she wept. She wept for the love she couldn't have, and the land that would be lost. The sun began to set, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. Sarah remained by the fence. She was praying, not for him to come back, that would be selfish. She prayed for peace. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was the low rumble of an engine. Sarah lifted her head. A vehicle was coming up the road, but it wasn't coming from the city. It was coming from the highway, heading back. The red truck appeared around the bend. It slowed down. It turned into the Miller driveway. Sarah stood up, her heart hammering. The truck crunched over the gravel and came to a halt. Daniel stepped out. He didn't look at the house. He walked straight across the field toward the fence where Sarah stood. He walked right up to the wood. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were clear. "I got to the turnpike," he said, his voice shaking. "I had the ticket in my hand, and I looked in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the man driving." He took a deep breath. "I can't sell the farm, Sarah. I can't let them pour concrete over this earth, and I can't leave you. But Sarah stammered. "The bishop the rules." "I don't care about the rules of the city anymore," Daniel said. "And if I have to learn the rules of this valley to stay near you, then I will." He reached over the fence. He took her hand. "I'm going to take the sign down. I'm going to work this land, and I'm going to ask your bishop what a man has to do to become a part of this community. I know it takes years. I know it's hard. But I'm not going anywhere." Sarah looked at their joined hands, the rough hand of the outsider and the smooth hand of the Amish girl. "It will be hard," she whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. "You will have to give up your truck." Daniel glanced back at the red pickup. He shrugged. "It gets terrible gas mileage anyway." "And the radio?" she added. "I prefer your voice," he said. 5 years later. The summer sun is warm on the Miller farm, though the locals now call it the Walker farm. The house is painted a crisp white, the barn is sturdy and red. The fields are lush with tobacco and corn, swaying in perfect rhythm with the wind. On the porch, a man sits in a rocking chair. He wears the broadfall trousers and suspenders of the Plain People. His beard is trimmed neatly along his jawline, signifying a married man. He is reading a German Bible, his lips moving silently with the text. The screen door opens. Sarah steps out. She looks older, her face wiser, but her eyes are bright. She holds a tray with 2 glasses of lemonade and a plate of fresh cookies. She sets the tray down and sits in the rocker beside him. "The corn looks good, Daniel," she says. "In Pennsylvania Dutch." "Ja," he replies, closing the book. "God has been good to us." He reaches out and takes her hand. His hands are rougher now, stained with the earth, the hands of a man who knows the soil. They sit in silence, watching the fireflies begin to dance over the fields. There is no roar of an engine, no sound of the city, just the crickets, the wind, and the beat of 2 hearts that found their way home. In the end, Daniel didn't just save the farm. The farm saved him, and love, as it always does, built a bridge where there was once only a fence.